it's me, James, and in this video, I'm going to be taking a look at the possibilities for the week ahead using my Archangel Metatron Oracle. So, stay tuned. Thanks so much for joining me for this Oracle Outlook video. If you are visiting here for the first time, I want to say welcome, and if you're a returning visitor and viewer, I'd like to say welcome back. So as I said in the opening, I'm going to be taking a look at the week ahead using my Archangel Metatron Oracle, and I am so excited because I created this deck towards the end of 2022. So if you watched my previous video where I used my Read-Language Affirmation Oracle, that is the first deck I created for this year, 2023. And the Metatron deck was the last deck of 2022. So I'm in this period where I'm getting to experiment with both, getting to break them in, and I figured what better way to break this particular deck in than doing an Oracle Outlook video reading for the week ahead. Now originally I had it in my mind, because I love alliteration, that I was going to call this Metatron Monday, because I'm going to hopefully have this video on the channel by Monday. But then I thought I would like to just maybe make it more broader or general in terms of the alliteration. So this is going to be Metatron messages for the week ahead. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to be using my Metatron Oracle. This is what the box looks like. It is a deck of 47 cards, and the 47, there's a reason for that, because 47 reduces to 11, and it said that Archangel Metatron vibrates at the same frequency as the master number 11 if you are into either angel numbers or numerology. So that is the reason for the 47 cards. I'm going to take the deck, because I have it right on hand, and we're just going to jump right in. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle the cards, and as I do that, I'm also going to ask for Metatron's presence to be felt or experienced in this reading session. And I'm asking Metatron to give us the insight or the guidance that would be most helpful or beneficial for the week ahead. So I'm just taking a moment to tune in on that intention. Shuffle the cards. So as I did in my previous video, I'm shuffling the cards in a way that you can clearly see that I'm shuffling. I'm going to let that card, I don't know if you saw that, but this card acted like it was going to fall out, so I'm going to let that card be the first card. And so while I'm thinking about that, my intention is to pull 7 cards, one for every day of the week ahead, starting with Monday and then working into the following Sunday. So as I'm filming this, it is now Sunday afternoon, the 12th of March. So this will be for the 13th, which is tomorrow, up until the following Sunday, which is the 19th. All right. I'm just shuffling until I feel letting guide to stop. I'm feeling that's good. So now what I'm going to do is, because I have the first card that's going to represent Monday already to the side, I'm going to take the remainder of the deck, and I like to cut the deck that I'm working with, so I'm going to cut it into 3, and then I'm putting it back. And what I'm going to do for the following 6 cards after the first card is I'm just going to pull right off the top of the deck consecutively for each day. Okay, so now that we have that worked out, let's take a look at the card that's going to represent Monday. I had a feeling this card was going to show up, and it's one of my favorite cards in the deck. And of course, I'm probably going to say that throughout the video because I really do love this deck, much like I love my Affirmation Oracle. It seems like the more I get into the deck making process further along, and the more decks that I create, I just love them each more and more. And the card that I just pulled fell, so I'm going to bend down to pick that up as gracefully as I can. Okay, so now this is the card that wanted to almost jump out. So here we have the card that's called Now. And so for tomorrow, because each card, remember, is going to represent one day of the week, the message here for Monday is to be present. This card called Now has in the image a man who's standing out in nature, outside, and it looks like he's almost meditating or in a meditative position or being very mindful of his surroundings. Yeah? And the energy, I don't know if you can clearly see the energy on the card, but each card has Metatron energy, so all the orbs and the colors and the lights that you are seeing in the image, that represents Metatron energy. So he's standing in the presence of Metatron, right? And so the reason for this card is because one of Metatron's names, I learned in doing my research for this deck, because I did do some research, is that Metatron goes by several names, and one of his names is that he is referred to as the angel of the presence, right? So he's all about being in the present moment, much like I talked about in my previous video about my takeaway from Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, about being present, right? So that's what this card is saying. Monday, it's really important to be mindful about what you're engaging in. You know, your surroundings, your interactions. It's really asking you just to be present, right? So if you're having a conversation with people or conversations with people, it's about really being present in those conversations, right? If you're engaged in a particular activity of any kind, it's about really being present in whatever it is that you are engaged in, right? It could also be that the Now card is asking you to focus on something in the here and now, meaning like it needs your immediate attention, because this can be a timing card in a way, just representing not the past, not the future, but the present moment, right? So it could be something that you need to attend to in the here and now, or, you know, on that day, like it needs to be handled on that day, meaning it needs your immediate attention, right? So that is the energy of the Now card. Remember, the Now is all about being mindful, but really being in the present moment, okay? So now the next card is going to represent Tuesday, and here we have empowerment. Now I love this because, you know, I have been dabbling in astrology just a little bit. It's a little bit to make me dangerous. So every day has an astrological association, and Tuesdays are associated with Mars, right? And so if you're familiar with astrology in any way, you'll know that Mars, one of its associations has to do with conflict. I tend to look at Tuesdays as an opportunity for conflict resolution, right? So I'm going somewhere with this. So here we have the empowerment card, and you can clearly see in the image, it looks like it's set in the scene where there's a protest going on. So now one of the things about Metatron that I'm aware of is that Metatron works with highly sensitive adults and children. So I imagined in the image that here we have an indigo adult woman who is protesting, right? And so indigos tend to want to right what they see as wrongs in society or the world at large, right? They feel like it's their mission to right some kind of wrong, right? So here we have, for Tuesday, maybe not in the larger sense where you're going to become some kind of activist, although that could be one of the meanings of this card. It could be either about being an activist or being associated or connected to some form of activism, right? So it could just be a matter of that. So if that resonates with you, then please go with that. But for me, this card is about like maybe just like standing up for yourself, asserting yourself if you feel like you've been treated unfairly or unjustly in some shape, form, or fashion, right? This is an opportunity for you to stand up for yourself and for you to do what you feel would change the situation for the better for you. Now, when I was growing up, you know, my mom used to say things like she was going on strike, right? So it could just be like if you are in your home environment, let's say, this could be saying like on some level you are being called to some degree to go on strike, meaning empowering people, because this card is about empowerment, right? And you would think that it's empowerment for the self, yeah, and that may be true, but it could also be empowerment, excuse me, for others. You are empowering other people to take care of themselves. And so sometimes we have to go on strike, and I'm using finger quotes for that, meaning like we're not going to pick up after people when they could pick up after themselves, you know, handle things that people can handle for themselves if we allow them the opportunity to do it, right? So I'm just seeing that in my mind about my mom used to saying like she was going on strike, which just meant like me and my brother would have to do for ourselves that particular day or that during that particular time. So empowerment could just be, what do you need to do to empower yourself? It could just be a matter of maybe standing up for yourself, being a little more assertive, right? In stating what it is that you need and want, you know, your rights, that kind of thing. Or, you know, taking the time to empower some people, but it may be more through actions than words. And that is Tuesday. Okay, so now our card for Wednesday. I had a feeling this card was going to show up too. So here we have for Wednesday, we have accessing the records. So now this card is a play on the Akashic records because Metatron is said to be associated with that. Actually, he's said to be the scribe for the Akashic records, right? So this could mean for some people that there may be an interest or a study or further developing the ability to access the Akashic records. So for, you know, meaning like you are an Akashic records consultant or you're moving towards that, right? So that is the literal aspect of the card. Maybe more metaphorical if that doesn't resonate, then this is a day where maybe some research or some analysis is needed or warranted. Meaning like you're going to be looking at reference material because the man is standing in a library and the visual is a pun for the Hall of Records, right? I do have a Hall of Records card in this deck, so it'd be interesting to see if it shows up. But this is a pun for being in a library, you know, and so the Hall of Records is said to be the warehouse where the Akashic records, are stored, right? But this could be like going to a library or a bookstore or some other place where knowledge is stored and kept, right? It could literally mean that you need to be looking up something or reading into something or reading up on something, right? Going with the book. It could also be that maybe if you are a spiritual consultant, not necessarily just the Akashic Records variety, but a spiritual consultant, I tend to look at this as a card that talks about, you know, reading for other people, much in the way that I'm offering a reading in this moment, right? So the man in the image could be a reader, but it's also a pun for being a reader, meaning an intuitive or psychic reader, right? So it could just be that as well. And maybe what do you need to do to kind of maybe brush up or read up or study to improve your craft or your ability to read, right? So there's that. And then the last thing, because it's a library and a book is being held and looked at, this could just be also too about, you know, something that needs to be studied. So we're talking about education or learning, you know. So that's, well, too, you know, taking up a course of study. But that is the accessing the records card, and that is for Wednesday. And I like that. I mentioned for Tuesday, Tuesday is associated with Mars. This card for Wednesday, Wednesdays is associated with Mercury, and so I like that because study and education all has to do with the mind, right? And so we all know, or at least those of us who have some astrological knowledge or awareness knows that Mercury represents the mind, right? So here we have accessing the records. Next card, and then now we're moving into Thursday. Okay, so this deck has 5 platonic solids, and each one represents a different element, and each one of those is tied to sacred geometry and Metatron's cube. So I'm going somewhere because the first card that I pulled for Thursday is a platonic solid, and it is the air card because the geometric pattern on the card is an octahedron, and it's associated with air. So now, I love that this is a follow-up to accessing the records, and I talked about study and learning. One of the meanings for this card is a willingness to learn. Now, since I keep going on with the astrology, Thursdays for me are associated with Jupiter, and Jupiter is all about expansion, and I love that the fact this is air. So this could be an expansion of the mind or expansion of the intellect, some kind of awareness or expanded awareness, right? This is the mental atmosphere, the mental landscape, the air, right? So there is that to consider. It's like something that may be undertaken on Wednesday in terms of reading up on something or learning something or studying something may lead to follow-up. The next day is an expanded awareness, or we're moving into more of that, right? Or it's something that could be considered really intellectual. It's making me feel like there may be something like facts and figures, data, computations, calculations. I'm all thinking about the logical, analytical type functions, right? That could be explored with taking the two cards into account. But the air card for me just represents being aware or becoming more aware of what's going on in our mental landscapes. What are we thinking? Maybe why are we thinking that? We come into some level of awareness about the origin of a thought or a thought process and working on revising that, right? I'm a big believer in awareness being the first step in a process of change, right? You can't change anything until you become aware that something needs to be changed, right? So that's what I'm seeing with the air card. It's making me feel like this is a day to really pay attention to what's going on in our mental landscapes, or that, going with the day before, being willing to learn something new, right? The other thing that's coming to my mind is that this card is also about balance, right? So it could just be about balancing the mental or the spiritual with the physical, right? Because I also see the air element as, moving towards the heavens, right? Another thing that Metatron is associated with, or known as in terms of names, is the angel of the heavens, right? So there we go. So that is the air card for Thursday. Okay, so now we are up to Friday and moving towards the weekend. So for Friday we have, okay, so this is a fun card, because if you take a look at the image, you will notice that my likeness is on this card. So this card is known as Crown Chakra Tingles, and I'm seeing a pattern here that's emerging, right? So the reason for the image is that I did not know this until sometime after my relationship with Metatron. So now I want to say this about Archangel Metatron from my own experience, right? So like I said, this deck is about what I have learned through study and research about Metatron through Archangel lore or Archangel mythology connected to Metatron. But the deck also is about my personal experiences, and that would be considered a UPG. UPG is for unverified personal gnosis, which means that all the experiences that I may share about my connection or experience with Metatron, I can't verify, which means that I experienced it and nobody was there when I had the experiences, but I know that they are significant. Anytime that it happens, especially in spiritual circles or within spiritual experiences or on your spiritual path, you have these mystical experiences, and you know without a shadow of a doubt that they are legitimate, right? They are valid. You know that you experienced them. No room for doubt, right? But if there was no one there with you, it can be considered an unverified personal gnosis, which means that I can't convince you of any of these experiences with Metatron other than just telling you, and you would just have to take it on some level of trust and faith that I mean what I'm saying, right? So, and I'm saying all that to say is that when I first started working with Metatron, and I love this, that there are no accidents. I'm holding up another card. So when I started working with Metatron, I became aware of Metatron's presence when I studied the Akashic Records. I'm a level 2 Akashic Records consultant, right? But when I first started, I was learning how to access the records, yeah? And so there, in part of that, there's a prayer that you say that kind of leads you into tapping into the records, right? So every time that I would say the prayer and I was in the records, I would feel this sensation in my crown, like my entire scalp would tingle. And so that, for me, was just my way of just knowing for sure. That was my tell that I was in the records. Then what happened one day is that I was in a bookstore of all places, and I wasn't thinking about the records, surely was not accessing the records, when I got what I call the tingles. And it happened so often outside of the records that I asked my teacher to help me understand what I was experiencing. And she just said in the moment that it was a connection with the records and the record keepers and the masters. That's what we call the entities associated with the Akashic records. That I was so sensitive to their energetic presence that I didn't need to be in the records to have a connection with them, right? So I thought it was really cool. What I have learned down the line, going with the idea that Metatron is associated with the records, is that there's an experience called crown chakra tingles. Yeah? And so basically what it is that you feel Metatron's presence through tingling in your crown chakra. I didn't know it. I was having that experience the entire time. I didn't know what it was called until I saw it on another YouTube video where they were talking about the signs or the ways that you know that you're in the presence of Metatron, and that was one of the signs. And I was like, oh my gosh, there is, and so that was a way of validating that. I just talked about unverified personal gnosis, right? That was actually a way to verify that personal experience, right? So I decided I wanted to make a card of it and have it in the deck. So here in the image, of course, you see me, and then you see my crown chakra, and I'm tuning into Metatron energy, or I'm feeling the presence of Metatron energy, right? So basically, this card could be either A, if you work with Metatron, or you are wanting to create a closer bond or connection with Metatron, this is a great card to have, because it says, on some level, once you set the intention, because intention is everything. If you set the intention, then you just have to be aware of what it feels like to be in the presence of Metatron, right? What it is for you. It may not be the same experience for everybody who's watching this, right? We all may tap into Metatron energy. That's what I call that. Metatron energy in a different way, right? So this card is just saying, like, if you want that connection, be aware of how it happens for you as an experience, right? Now, if that's not it for you, that doesn't resonate with you, then this card is just saying, be on the lookout possibly for an aha, a revelation, an epiphany. Now, what I'm saying here is I like this because we talked about this idea of expanded awareness, right? And this card talks about that because the crown chakra is an energy center at the top of the head, right? So sometimes this card can be about energy downloads, like you just get a sudden idea or a sudden knowing about an experience or situation, right? So I like how we're moving on about studying, reading, educating ourselves, right, this week, learning, being willing to learn, and then we have this idea about an epiphany or an aha or some kind of energy download being experienced, right? So really, I'm feeling like this week is really Metatron's message through a few cards is about really just paying attention to your thoughts and being willing to experience a new thought, one that could expand your awareness or your consciousness, yeah? So that is what I would offer regarding the Crown Chakra Tingles card. And so that was the card for Friday, I believe. So we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yep, right. So now we have 2 more cards for the weekend, right? So this next card is Saturday, and you cannot make this up because I mentioned this card without showing it, and it is the Hall of Records. You cannot make this up. So there is something about acquiring knowledge, right? Accessing knowledge, being educated, right? This could be a pun for a hall. So the image really is like a hall that stores books. So again, we have this theme about a library or a warehouse where information is stored, right? So it could just be a matter, again, if you are resonating with the idea of tapping into the Akashic field or accessing the Hall of Records, taking up the Akashic Records as a form of study, spiritual study, right? Then this card bodes well for you. It could just be moving more into that. Now for me, because it represents a building, this card could be about building up to something, right? So it's about laying the foundation for something and then building on that, because it's a literal, or in this case, it's more of an energetic building, but I used the building for the image, right? So it could just be building up to something, right? So laying a foundation and then you build on it, right? But this card can also be about institutions. So if we're talking about maybe educational institutions, because that seems to be a theme running out throughout the cards this week. So it could just be a matter of actually being in a physical building that represent some kind of higher learning. That's what I'm being told to say. Higher learning, right? So that could be college, university. Somebody may be thinking about that, looking into that. But it could just also be higher personal learning, higher spiritual learning, right? We're tapping into new levels or higher levels of consciousness or awareness, right? Right? It's making me feel like, because I'm looking at the image and they're bookshelves, right? So it could just be whatever the study is, whether it's in the more mundane, physical, material side of the world, of this world, right? Worldly experience, or it's more into the spiritual. There's going to be multi-levels to it because of the shelves, right? So that's what I'm seeing with the Hall of Records. But I love this because I mentioned this. I said it would be funny if the card showed up. Well, it's funny, but not funny, haha. But here it is, okay? So that is for Saturday. So now as I'm saying that, there could be, because of the day itself, there could be something about like a workshop or a seminar or something that takes place on the weekend, but it revolves around learning. So I will just say, this card is really speaking to me in the moment, because Saturday, on the 18th, that's the 18th of March, I will be at Unity. That is the church that I belong to and I work at part-time, but I will be there because we have the CEO from Unity coming and giving a workshop that day, a workshop on focused ministry. So that would be interesting. So that fits for me. It resonates with me. So I would love to hear how that possibility could resonate with you. The idea about maybe attending a course or a workshop or a seminar of some kind. Yeah? Okay. So that is the Hall of Records. So now we are up to the final card for the week, and then we are on Sunday. Okay. This is a great card to have because I'm seeing like there's a narrative going through the card. So this is a nice one to end on. So for Sunday, we have the perspective card. And in the image, there's an eagle. And so in my study of Metatron lore, the eagle is an animal that's associated with Metatron because it has the ability to look ahead or look back in great distances, right? So the eagle can represent the idea of prophecy. And if you know Metatron lore, it is said that Metatron was the human prophet Enoch, and then ascended into heaven and became the Archangel Metatron, right? So there's an aspect of prophecy here, meaning like being able to see down the line, right? Having a perspective where you can see all possibilities, right? Past, present, future represents being able to see all possibilities. And isn't that one of the things we do when we tap into the Akashic Records? We tend to want to gain access to information regarding the past, the present, and the future, right? So I love this. But perspective, the word perspective, just represents a different point of view, right? This is bird's eye view, right? Because the eagle is a bird. So a bird's eye view. So we have this element about being up in the air again. But this is really about a heightened perspective, right? You know, being able to rise above your challenges. So this card, for me, is saying, like, one of the messages could be about being willing to rise above your challenges, or being able to look at your challenges, meaning what's going on the surface, right, in a much different way. Like when your perspective is heightened, you tend to look at what's going on beneath it much differently because you have a different view of it, right? So this is about gaining a different view or a different perspective of some possible experience, right? Especially if it's challenging, a challenging experience, and then being able to kind of rise above that or move beyond it, right? Because the eagle is also flying in the air, right? So this could also be about flight too. You know, there may be travel involved in literally air travel, right? Taking a plane or some other mode of air travel, right? It could also be encouragement, like if I go back to the idea, the empowerment card showed up earlier, right? It could be empowering you to spread your wings and fly, right? So who might need that? If you are embarking on something, spiritually speaking, in terms of a course or a topic of interest, something that maybe you think would be beneficial to others, maybe something that you feel is going to empower other people, right? Empowerment, empower other people, but it's about you being able to spread your wings and fly in that regard, right? So that is what I want to offer to you for the week ahead using my Archangel Metatron Oracle. Thank you so much for sharing this space with me. I am James Mitchell. Again, we have been working with the Archangel Metatron Oracle, and what I will do is, like I was going to plan for my last video with the Oracle deck I used then, I will be making a separate video showing you all the cards, if you're interested in that. And also too, I'm going to make this deck available to the public as well, so stay tuned for further details on that. Again, thank you so much for joining me for this Oracle Outlook. I hope that you have a fantastic week, and take care.